I hope everybody's doing well. It is late August now while I'm recording the audio for this YouTube video. The footage here that was shot late July, early August. Just getting back to laying the audio down over top of the video. Going to do things a little bit differently now as we're doing the podcast, which is, you can get it on all podcast platforms, but it's, you look for Christmas Tree Farm podcast or Sissel Christmas Tree Farm, and you'll find it there. Gonna start shooting, as we shoot the footage, we're gonna lay down the podcast audio, and we might be able to lay that audio right over top of the footage that we shoot. And then that way we're kind of knocking out both at the same time. But we may actually just do the audio for the video separately. It may have a lot of content that overlaps because it's based on the notes that we take in the video that we shoot for that month, right? The goal being one podcast and at least one video every month, kind of similar content, just whatever we're currently doing on the farm. As you can see in this video, there's some footage that comes earlier that shows us spraying, the method that I use to spray my trees. If you've been following along, we kind of went on vacation and came back, and everything you're seeing now, it was grown up in the matter of 10 to 14 days. It went from clean rows to the Johnson grass had, pretty much taken over. The Johnson grass was 4 feet tall everywhere or more. So I use a method where we basically cover up. I take a bunch of 3 to 5 gallon pots and cover up all the trees in a row, and then I'll come back over the top and spray it. Spraying with probably like a 2% glyphosate dilution over top. So it's laying a lot of material down, and it kills it pretty quick. Works pretty good. The trees themselves overall, like you're seeing as we go through this, the trees themselves are mostly fine. We do have some copper trees, maybe one a row or less than one per row. That is about what we're getting. Not having a lot of burn on the trees, so the chemical didn't really affect the trees. But again, we're covering them with pots, so to be expected. Some of the pots do have some holes in them, right? Because it's a normal containerized pot, so it has holes in the bottoms for the roots, but so see a little bit where it touches some of them on the tops or the sides. But overall, and in some areas where it was so thick that you couldn't even see the tree, I just spray right over the top of it, and didn't appear to have any effect on the tree, because I don't think the glyphosate even hit the tree because it's covered up with weeds. You can't make it out all the way in these videos, but our rows all have drip tape irrigation, which does make it a little easier to locate the trees. You just walk the drip tape, and there'll be some footage of that a little bit later. But I'm just walking the rows here to get some footage for myself to kind of look through and compare how the trees are doing, what they look like now, opposed to what they look like prior to the weeds growing up, and seeing if there's any impact on the herbicide that we did on these. Currently, I've got a trial going on in a different part of the farm over some Black Hill spruce, where we're trying out some different things like that we can spray over the top on that. As an example, one of the rows, we're just spraying it's just Clethodim over the top of that row, which, we have mostly grass and shattercane type Johnson grass. So the Clethodim actually does pretty good for rows like that. So I've got one row that we're kind of just spraying that. I've got one row where we went with about a 1% glyphosate solution. Probably it's actually closer to 0.75% glyphosate solution with Clethodim in it. And then I actually did a row that is Clethodim and a SureGuard. So it's a 51% Flyumioxin as well. In this video you're seeing right now, this is kind of the overspray method that we're using now. This is straight glyphosate, so that's why I'm covering my trees up in this video. A very potent, amount of glyphosate in this. So we did cover everywhere that we could see the trees. And the earlier footage was kind of the after effects of that after about 7 to 10 days. So you could see that it killed it off pretty good, and it didn't truly affect the trees that much. And I used about a teaspoon of SureGuard as well in our trials that we're doing now over the top of our Black Hill spruce. So it's actually Clethodim, which shouldn't hurt it at all, and then SureGuard. What I'm seeing is currently, and that'll be in next month's video and podcast, which will be towards the middle of late September, once we have all of that in. But it's looking like the SureGuard at that rate, which was about a teaspoon of SureGuard for a backpack sprayer, which is 3.5, 4 gallons, did not have much effect, if any, on the Black Hill spruce in mid to late August, but it does knock back a lot of the weeds. So, and then the Clethodim is obviously killing all the grass type things. It's not doing a whole lot for mare's tail, and it's not doing hardly anything to the yellow nutsedge. I think our second worst thing that we have here, one being the Johnson grass, shattercane, type deal. Number 2 is the yellow nutsedge, which when it's young, before it starts throwing up the tubers, it kind of looks like a really dense grass, but it's not grass, so it requires something else. I don't have any of what we had used in the past called sedge hammer. I don't think it's safe to spray over top of your trees, so I'm not even going to mess around with that for the most part. I'm going to wait till late September before we spray a little bit higher rate of the SureGuard, which it looks, at least early, it looks to have some effect on the nutsedge, but I don't think a whole lot. So I'll be curious if we up our dose of SureGuard, if it will have a more impact on the nutsedge or not. Again, here we're walking, and I am overspraying a straight glyphosate solution over the rows. You see some we're using actually 5-gallon buckets because the trees are larger than the 3 to 5 gallon can fit safely over the top without smashing the top down a whole lot. One day I'm going to invest in a rechargeable battery backpack sprayer. This pump backpack sprayer, I think I pump it up too much, so it's spraying a lot of material, because I will go through an entire backpack on 2 rows. Our rows are 250 feet long, so I mean it's pretty lengthy rows, but laying a lot of material down. I think it's because I over pump with the pump, and if I have the battery, I think it'll be a little bit easier to calibrate with the nozzle, so that I'm not having to stop and pump, and I put down a lot of material, on the first couple trees, and then it kind of lessens as I go. Video kind of format changed here. I'm an amateur, but you can see I'm walking the drip tape right here, right? So this is how, when we first came back from vacation, all of our trees were covered up in grass and weeds. So we're walking the drip tape here to identify all of our trees, smashing the weeds around, and pulling them back on every tree. As you can see, the weeds didn't really affect the tree. They all look pretty good. But we did need to identify them all so that we could come back and spray, right? The tree type that we've seen in these rows primarily is canane fir. And the seed source, it varies depending on which row that we're in. you go back and listen to some of our podcasts, we talk about seed source and where we're getting certain things and what's done the best for us. Also, notes that we got from the podcast that we can include on this is, this is late July work here, early August. This is definitely late July right here. At this point, we've ordered all of our Christmas tree seedling stock for the upcoming year, fall and the following spring. So we're through 22, and people ask all the time, about that stuff. And we've already got standing orders in for 23, right? So it's, you don't want to wait till the last second to try to get your seedlings, especially if you're looking to get the right seed sources or the type of mature seedlings or transplants. I say seedlings. I never buy seedlings, okay? We buy transplants. So at least the 2-1. And if you're buying, what I prefer to get, if you can find them, is the container stock, especially if you can get the type that are transplant container stock. To each their own, as far as what they get, bare root seedlings and transplants and container transplants. But for us right here in central Kentucky, again, pretty decent soil. It does have clay in the soil. We have slopes, lots of slopes in our fields here. If you go to the web soil survey maps that were done for our county, our drainage class here is well drained, and in some places it is very well, I forget what's above well drained, but very well drained. So I do think it might be off just a little bit in some of our areas. I think in some of our areas we probably have poor drainage, and that is the little bit more low-lying areas. But overall, because of the slope, the under the ground also probably slopes at that same rate, and gives us pretty decent drainage here. We recently went to the Mid-America Christmas Tree Association meeting, and we learned about drain tile and all of these things. And I had history with drain tile, from agricultural, and for the same reason it's applied, I guess, in Christmas tree farms. I do feel like they put an overemphasis on that, maybe, at least in the sessions that I was at. I guess everyone has to figure out what works for them. But if you do have poorly drained soil, if you can confirm that it's poorly drained by surface water for more than a couple hours on your farm, or your land survey maps actually say poorly drained, I do agree that you need to do something for your drainage, or at least have a plan. And that's all I got for today. I'll catch you guys next time. Sissel Tree Farm signing out.